Isaias, welcome to hashtag World Food Day.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me again, Jeremy.
Okay, the first question I wanted to ask you is, could you tell us about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Isaias, and I'm an environmental media creator under the moniker Queer Brown Vegan. A little bit about myself is I'm trained as an environmental scientist and had this huge passion and curiosity for environmental education that eventually led me into providing education literacy for young people across digital media. And for me, food is very personal because that's really actually what got my curiosity for environmental education is the way that we grow our food and distribute it and also talk about it through a cultural lens.
Can I ask you, why is World Food Day so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to me because it's almost like the first like Earth Day, right? That was celebrated in the 1970s. So with World Food Day, I see it as an awareness for us to understand that we're still not meeting the needs for our global food insecurity, and that although we have much technologies, policies, methods to reduce food waste and to distribute it to communities, it's still not reaching everyone. And so for me, it's a reminder that innovation, inspiration, but also collaboration with policymakers, industries, creators, influencers, whatever you may call it, are still needing to approach this with multi solutions versus just one lens of a solution that can provide the issue or provide the resolution for world hunger. It's multiple solutions that exist.
Isaiah, thank you. So, the role of education, what role can it play in helping understand the critical role food plays in our lives and ultimately to creating a more sustainable and peaceful world?
I love this question so much because I think my inner education comes in and also my younger self comes in here is that when you inform people about food systems, it helps them in different categories. One is through food security, right? So, like, education can help create food security by teaching students about food availability, access, utilization, and stability. And one great example of this is schools having gardens and feeding programs for their own students to introduce these types of concepts at a very young age. And then you have, food safety, right? Making sure that people know how to handle, store, and prepare food is something that's so important. Where a lot of us often think that what is delivered from our grocery is shelf life stable or needs to be refrigerated or frozen. How do we really adopt those methods to become more sustainable? But also, I would say, like for me, it's like the advocacy, right? So when people are influence or presented some type of information around food systems, it encourages them to become more advocates for a healthier food systems. And these types of systems and these individuals that are later influenced at a young age can go into food policies, sustainable agriculture, or like other community-led initiatives in their community. And I think the last pillar I always say is that it gets us to get systems thinking, right? Education can teach students to understand this large complexity around food systems, but also the ways in which we're all interconnected in order to understand like what are the science and policies that go into play in receiving our food and why it's critical to understand that, to understand the ways that the food system operates.
So, to the individuals watching, what knowledge can you share with us that will help them on their journeys? A journey that's good for ourselves in terms of our health and nutrition, but also good for the planet.
Yeah, I would say that for any young person out there or a person just trying to learn more is really looking back at your kitchen, right? The kitchen is the most accessible place that all of us are known to or familiar to. But a large percentage of food waste is generated in our kitchen because of proper misstorage. So one of the things I try to tell people is the importance of fermentation and preserving. Fermentation is an ancient technique that's been used for decades. I mean, everyone should be learning more about fermentation as it's being lost because that's something that, we are actually not understanding the ways in which we can save food. But then the second thing I would say is create initiatives to go urban foraging. A lot of people don't know this, but there's large amounts of edible fruits that are available in our neighborhoods. And if we're able to come together to create initiatives that redistribute the fruits that are in there, or even teaching young people to share fruit in their communities, it allows them to connect to ecological knowledge. And I think for me, foraging is one of those easy ways to get young people or like even kids inspired to learn about food systems. Because when you learn that, you know, in the UK, for example, during the months of, I believe, June or July, cherries are growing, you know, in the neighborhoods, and a lot of people don't know that they're edible. And so, how do we really teach people about the importance of edible fruits around them and how they can actually contribute to redistributing that or giving to their own communities to teach that importance?
Okay, so where do we go? I mean, if I want to go foraging, I I don't really know what I can eat and what I can't eat. Where's a place for us to go to understand what's safe and what isn't?
Yeah, absolutely. There is this favorite collective. It's called Fruity Walks, and it's basically a London community that goes around London and maps out areas that are edible fruits in which you can actually pick the fruit from to make sure that you're respecting everyone's like space. But also to like it, I would say to like asking your local Facebook groups is very ideal. A lot of people are always sharing plant urban foraging knowledge on there. And a lot of the times in different neighborhoods, you'd be surprised that people actually leave out fruit that was picked on their lawns or their front homes, and they leave it out in the front to say like take one or get free fruit. I think those are kind of like the most easiest ways to kind of adopt those practices into your lifestyle, and to just think about like even mapping your own places. Like if you go somewhere, remember that location where those cherries grew. And like, you know, I think for me, I try to really remember what areas and what season things grow, so then I know when they're available during that time.
That's amazing. Listen, you've learned so much about food. I mean, you have been kind of leading the way on manifesting, informing, inspiring, and engaging people around the world with your work. What's kind of one of the most important things that you'd like to share with us that you've learned that you sort of think about? I mean, I'm just share a wisdom with us before we go.
Yeah, I love this. I'm a huge history fan and enthusiast. I think when we learn about history, it informs us around food systems. So I use this really cultural example in the ways that I live, and the ways why I love foraging specifically for mushrooms. So one fun fact is that when I was learning about food systems and what people would eat locally here in the States or in Latin America or different regions, I learned that Mexico, for example, where my parents are from, used to actually be a large fungivore population. So what that means is that people primary's diets was mainly mycelium. Not to say they ate it all, but it was mainly a large part of their diet. And so for me, I think when I was learning about the history and then asking my parents, specifically my grandparents, about, you know, what did they do to survive without a grocery market, because they didn't really grow with one, they would tell me foraging was one of the keys. And my grandmother actually was a huge forager. She knew how to found mushrooms and everything. And I never knew this until years later when I picked up foraging myself to kind of learn more about what does it mean to eat locally if I'm forced to eat locally and to source locally. And I remember like just like being able to forage so easily. And my parents were like, you know, your grandma used to forage like you. It's so weird that you picked it up without even like thinking or asking about us. And I felt like for me, that's really what continues to inspire me to be curious, is that like, it's not just trying to save the world from hunger, which is true, but it's also trying to reconnect my past self or my historical experiences with my ancestors. And I really feel like that's a cultural connection to me that I deeply care and want to continue having.
So your grandmother and that story that you've shared with us today is a real source of inspiration and kind of keeps you going.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the best way I honor her. And I think a lot of young people can also learn more about their cultural context from history and what informs their decisions to do things.
Yeah, that's a really lovely story to end on. And so before we go, though, we have to ask, so for people who'd love to find out more about you, where do they go for information?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can follow me at queerbrownvegan.com or any socials at queerbrownvegan, and feel free to connect with me on there. I have lots of educational resource on there for anyone that wants to learn about environmentalism.
Isaias, it's amazing to hear your story. Thank you for participating in #World Food Day, and we wish you the very best on your incredible journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much again, Jeremy.